Rookie trucker Cody Miller was under pressure to cut corners and rush a delivery. But he chose integrity over shortcuts, refusing to compromise safety. What he didn't know was that someone was watching, the company's hidden CEO, and that single decision would end up changing the lives of drivers across the company. The yard was quiet but tense under the sodium lights, shadows stretching across the rows of trailers. Cody Miller, 23, parked his battered white Freightliner by the fueling station, the hiss of air brakes punctuating the stillness. He stepped down, boots crunching on gravel, shoulders stiff with exhaustion. It had been his third straight night run since landing the job at Falcon Logistics, and he was desperate to prove himself. The radio crackled as Chester's gruff voice ordered him to the office. Inside the cramped dispatch trailer, walls yellowed by years of cigarette smoke, Chester leaned against a desk littered with paperwork. His thinning hair was slicked back, eyes dark with impatience. "You're late," he snapped. "That load's gotta be in Springfield before dawn. Skip your walk around. Hook up and go." Cody shifted uncomfortably. He looked down at his father's old leather gloves, a daily reminder of the man who taught him the rules of the road. His father's death 5 years ago in a fiery wreck, caused by worn brakes no one checked, still haunted him. Cody shook his head. "I need 15 minutes for a full inspection. I won't leave without it." Chester slammed a fist on the desk. "That's not how we do things here, kid. We get it done." His tone dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You do this my way, or you won't last the week." A murmur of laughter floated in from outside. Some senior drivers, leaning against their trucks, watched with folded arms. They'd survived this place by playing along, doing what was needed, no questions asked. Mark, the oldest, with gray stubble and a perpetual scowl, spat on the ground. "Daddy's boy wants to check his brakes," he jeered, earning a round of snickers. Cody felt heat rise to his face, but he clenched his jaw. "I'm not risking anyone's life because we're late." As he turned to leave, Chester's voice followed like a cold wind. "Suit yourself. Don't expect a job tomorrow." Outside, Cody's boots echoed on the cracked pavement as he crossed to his assigned trailer. His flashlight beam danced across the landing gear, tires, and brake lines. Each hiss, rattle, and glint told a story. A cut airline here, a missing reflective strip there. He noted everything carefully, determined to leave nothing unchecked. At the far end of the yard, a man in a faded brown hoodie swept trash into a bin, pausing occasionally to watch. His face was partially hidden by the hood, but his eyes tracked every movement, sharp and calculating. This was Simon Anderson, the company's secret owner, disguised as a yard hand. Weeks earlier, he decided to go undercover after hearing whispers that his late father's company had lost its way. Tonight, he found the proof he was looking for. Simon's pulse quickened as he listened to Chester bark new orders over the radio. He saw the cracks in the culture his father once built with pride, a culture now rotting from shortcuts and fear. And in Cody, he saw a rare spark of the old values. The inspection took longer than expected. A brake line on the rear axle was frayed dangerously thin. Cody radioed Chester to report it. The response came back like venom. "You idiot! That's time we don't have. Take it or leave it." Cody stood his ground. He called the garage, requesting immediate repairs. A mechanic grumbled but shuffled over with tools. The senior drivers watched, now silent, the night air heavy with anticipation. A late delivery could mean a lost contract, and everyone knew Chester would make sure blame landed on Cody's shoulders. Meanwhile, across the yard, Simon moved between trailers, blending in with other night workers. He overheard drivers muttering about the kid who thinks he's better than us. But he also caught younger drivers whispering admiration for Cody's nerve. The mechanic finished repairs just before 1 a.m., shaking his head. "Good catch," he said under his breath. "You probably saved a life." Cody nodded, grateful for the small validation. As he pulled his rig onto the highway, the taillights glowed red in the darkness, a stubborn beacon of integrity. Back in the yard, Chester kicked over a trash can, rage boiling. He called his assistant, instructing him to alter the maintenance logs before morning. "Simon, standing nearby with his broom, heard every word. He watched the dispatch trailer's door slam shut, mind racing. His father's legacy was drowning in a toxic culture, and Cody Miller had just given him hope that it wasn't too late to turn things around. At a truck stop miles down the interstate, Cody parked for coffee, replaying the night's confrontation. Doubts gnawed at him. Would he be fired in the morning? Had he made things worse for himself? But deep down, he felt peace, because he'd kept his promise to his father, always put safety first. And unknown to him, back at Falcon Logistics, the man who owned the company was already planning a conversation that would change Cody's life forever. The sun rose over Falcon Logistics' yard, bathing rows of idling trucks in pale orange light. By 7 a.m., word of Cody's late-night stand had spread like wildfire. Drivers huddled in groups, whispering about the rookie who dared to say no to Chester. Some called him a fool. Others called him a hero. But one thing was certain. The yard's uneasy silence had cracked. Inside the dispatch trailer, Chester's phone rang nonstop. Clients demanded answers for missed or late deliveries. His face, red and slick with sweat, twisted in rage as he barked half-truths to keep them at bay. He slammed the receiver down, glaring out the window as Cody's rig pulled back into the yard after completing his now-delayed delivery. A tense crowd of drivers parted as Cody climbed down from his cab. Mark, Kevin, and Oliver, three of the most senior drivers, stepped forward. Mark, wiry and sun-weathered, spoke first. "Kid," he said, voice low, "you got guts. More than the rest of us put together." Kevin and Oliver nodded grimly. Chester burst through the trailer door, voice booming across the yard. "Everyone get moving. We're already behind. You've got loads waiting." Mark raised a hand. "Not anymore." He turned to his friends. "We're done. We're not risking our necks for a paycheck if you're going to push us to skip safety. We quit." Their words dropped like a bomb. The yard fell deathly silent. Younger drivers exchanged wide-eyed looks. Dock workers stopped moving pallets. Even the morning breeze seemed to pause. Chester's face went white, then purple with fury. "You can't just walk out," he screamed. "We've got contracts. You're under obligation." Kevin shook his head. "I'd rather lose my house than my life," he said simply. Oliver added, "If you cared half as much about safety as you do about deadlines, this place wouldn't be falling apart." Their words carried, echoing off trailers and rattling the dispatch office windows. Chester lunged forward, shoving Mark in the chest. Mark stumbled back but didn't flinch. They tensed, ready for a fight, but Mark stood tall, eyes blazing with defiance. "We're done here," he repeated. The three men climbed into their rigs and pulled out of the yard one by one. Diesel engines rumbled like thunder, trailers clattering as they left behind decades of loyalty. As they disappeared beyond the chain-link fence, it felt like the air had been sucked from the yard. Chaos descended immediately. Dispatchers scrambled to reshuffle loads. Junior drivers hesitated, unsure if they'd be blamed next. Clients called in, their voices sharp with anger. Chester's lies to buy time only made things worse. One customer threatened to cancel their entire contract if a shipment wasn't delivered that afternoon. Meanwhile, in the garage, Chester stalked up to Dave, the weary garage supervisor. He shoved a clipboard into Dave's chest. "Fix the logs," he hissed. "Show that every pre-trip inspection was done. Make it look perfect." Dave hesitated. "That's falsifying federal records, Chester. I could lose my license." Chester's eyes narrowed dangerously. "So could I. And if I go down, you go down with me. Remember those overtime hours you fudged last quarter? I still have the paperwork." Dave's shoulders slumped, defeat washing over his lined face. He knew he was trapped. He nodded slowly, taking the clipboard to the small garage office. Out on the gravel, Simon Anderson watched everything unfold. Pushing a trash cart between trailers, he overheard every hushed argument, saw every nervous glance. His mind churned. In just hours, the ugly truth of the company's decay had surfaced. A culture of shortcuts, intimidation, and fear. Simon spotted Cody in the distance, wiping down his rig. He approached quietly, studying the young man's face, worn from lack of sleep but unwavering. "Heard you had a rough night," Simon said in a low voice. Cody looked up, surprised by the stranger's kind tone. "Guess I did what I thought was right." Simon nodded, hiding the approval that burned in his chest. "That's rare around here." Back at the dispatch trailer, Chester's assistant rushed in breathless. "We've got 3 loads with no drivers, Chester. What do we do?" Chester's eyes darted to the growing line of idle trucks. Panic flared behind his eyes. "Call everyone. Anyone. Offer overtime. Lie if you have to. Tell them we'll pay double. Just get someone behind those wheels." But there were no takers. Drivers who'd seen Mark, Kevin, and Oliver quit weren't eager to stick their necks out, especially with rumors flying that Chester might be in trouble. The yard, usually a symphony of roaring engines and shouting voices, fell into a disquieting lull. Simon stepped out of the shadows of 2 parked trailers, quietly noting every desperate move Chester made. He watched Dave emerge from the garage office, his eyes hollow after doctoring the logs. He decided not to act yet. Even if his company was late or missed some deliveries, he could renegotiate the contracts later. It was important to know how far Chester would go. The rot went deeper than he feared. As Simon wheeled his cart past the dispatch trailer, Chester's furious voice rang out. "This yard's falling apart because of one rookie who thinks he's better than the rest of us." But Simon knew the truth. It wasn't Cody's honesty that broke the yard. It was years of bad leadership finally cracking under its own weight, and he intended to fix it. By midday, the yard's usual rhythm had unraveled completely. Trucks idled with no drivers to move them. Dock workers smoked nervously by pallets that should have been halfway to their destinations. The ringing phones inside the dispatch trailer were relentless, each shrill tone a reminder of the chaos. Chester paced the cramped trailer like a caged animal. Sweat darkened the armpits of his shirt as he barked orders at anyone who dared enter. "I don't care how you do it. Get someone on those trucks now," he shouted at a dispatcher barely out of high school. The young man flinched under Chester's glare but stammered that no drivers were answering calls. Chester's face twisted with fury. "Then lie. Tell them the trucks are empty moves, easy miles. Promise bonuses. Anything." His voice dropped into a low hiss. "If we don't move those loads today, contracts go up in smoke, and so do we." He slipped into the garage, cornering Dave, the weary garage supervisor. "The logs aren't enough," Chester growled. "Backdate every repair order for the last 2 weeks. If an inspector shows up, they need to see everything buttoned up. Understand?" Dave swallowed hard, grease-streaked hands trembling as he reached for a clipboard. He hated every word of what he was about to do, but Chester's earlier threats hung heavy in the air. In the corner, a young mechanic pretended to tighten a lug nut while watching the exchange, eyes wide with fear. Outside, Cody sat on the step of his rig, elbows resting on his knees, staring into the distance. The weight of the morning pressed on his chest like a boulder. The 3 drivers who quit had decades of experience combined. Their absence rippled through every schedule, every delivery, and everyone seemed to look at him as the cause. When he stepped into the break room for coffee, conversations stopped. Some glared, others looked away awkwardly. Cody felt the isolation tightening around him like a noose. He wondered if he'd made a mistake, if his father's advice about always putting safety first didn't apply in the real world. But that afternoon, as Cody checked his tires, a voice broke the silence. "Sir." It was Travis, the youngest driver on the lot, barely 20 and fresh from CDL school. His eyes were wide with nervous respect. "I heard what you did last night. That was brave." Cody blinked, surprised. "Thanks, Travis. I just did what I thought was right." Travis shifted from foot to foot, glancing around as if worried Chester might appear. "Could you show me how to do a real pre-trip? They never taught us much in training." Cody's heart lifted slightly. "Of course," he said. For the next 20 minutes, he walked Travis through every step, explaining why each mattered. Soon 2 more drivers joined them quietly, eager to learn. Nearby, Simon leaned against a forklift, watching the small group. Every word, every gesture, every spark of hope Cody offered them rekindled Simon's faith that his father's company might still have a future worth saving. Back in the dispatch trailer, Chester's desperation grew. He cornered two junior dispatchers, Kate and Felix, and laid out a script. Tell customers that unexpected mechanical issues were resolved and deliveries would be on time, even though he knew many trucks weren't moving at all. Kate hesitated, fear in her eyes. Felix, just a few weeks into the job, looked like he might vomit. If you value your jobs, Chester snarled, you'll read the damn script. They began making calls with trembling voices, weaving a web of lies that strained credibility. Each lie bought only minutes of peace before the next furious client call rolled in. The dispatch trailer felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow. As Chester raged inside, Simon wandered the yard, noting every driver who refused to move trucks without inspections. He spoke quietly to loaders and mechanics, asking casual questions that revealed patterns of ignored maintenance, threats from dispatch, and a culture of fear that had grown like mold. Simon's mind raced. He had to move carefully. An outright confrontation could collapse the company overnight. But now he knew who was part of the rot and who, like Cody, was worth fighting for. Later that afternoon, Cody spotted Simon sweeping near his truck. The two exchanged a quiet nod. Rough day, Simon asked casually. Cody sighed. Feels like I'm fighting a battle I can't win. Simon paused. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. His eyes locked with Cody's, and for a moment, Cody felt something shift, a silent reassurance that he wasn't alone. That evening, as shadows stretched across the yard, Chester held an emergency meeting in the dispatch trailer. He ordered everyone inside, eyes blazing. This ends now. We get those deliveries out by morning, or none of you will have a job. Is that clear? Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Kate had never experienced anything like this. Dave stood by the door, arms crossed, regret carved into every line on his face. In the back, Simon slipped in quietly, unnoticed, catching every word. As Chester's threats hung in the air, Simon's resolve solidified. He would not let his father's company die under the weight of fear and lies. Beyond simply removing Chester, he had a plan in mind to expose him, find drivers who acted like him, and protect those who were willing to rebuild Falcon Logistics from the ground up. Meanwhile, Cody, alone in his cab under the pale moonlight, watched the dark office windows glow. He wondered what tomorrow would bring, but felt he wasn't fighting alone anymore. The morning air was thick with tension as trucks rolled in and out of the Falcon Logistics yard. Rumors had been swirling for days. Late-night meetings, canceled loads, and Chester's increasingly erratic orders. Drivers whispered that the company might fold or that federal inspectors were coming. But Cody Miller's biggest worry wasn't gossip. It was the slip of paper taped to his locker door. Report to the office at 8 a.m. He spent the night tossing in his bunk, mind spinning. Every scenario led to the same end. He'd be fired for causing chaos. He dressed in the gray work shirt his father gave him, the fabric worn thin but comforting. As the yard came to life with rumbling diesels, he walked toward the dispatch trailer, each step heavier than the last. Inside the office, the air was stifling. Cody's boots squeaked on the cracked linoleum as he stepped in. Chester stood behind his cluttered desk, arms crossed, eyes cold. But beside him stood a man Cody recognized instantly, Simon Anderson, now in a crisp navy suit, his posture radiating quiet authority. Gone was the humble yard worker. In his place was someone who owned the building they stood in. Cody's breath caught. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of the dusty wall clock. Simon stepped forward. Cody Miller, he said, his voice calm but firm. You've probably heard a lot of rumors lately. I'd like to clear them up. Chester shifted uncomfortably, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Simon reached into a folder on the table, pulling out copies of falsified maintenance logs. He laid them out with deliberate care. These documents, Simon said, his voice low but cutting, show that required inspections were marked complete when they were not. They put every driver, every load, and every innocent family on the road in danger. Chester's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. It wasn't, he started, but Simon raised a hand. The room fell silent. I've spoken with drivers, mechanics, and dispatchers, Simon continued. I've seen the fear, the shortcuts, and the blame games. But I've also seen something else, a spark of integrity. His eyes met Cody's. You stood up when it mattered most. Cody felt his cheeks burn. He searched Simon's gaze for anger or disappointment, but found only gratitude. Simon reached out, shaking his hand firmly. You honored your father's legacy, and you reminded me of mine. Chester sputtered. You can't possibly be taking his side. He's just a kid. He cost us drivers, clients. Simon's voice cut him off like a blade. No, Chester. You cost us those things. Your fear of accountability created this chaos. He gestured to the documents. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending a full investigation. Chester staggered back a step, face ashen, as Simon waved in a waiting HR officer. Without a word, Chester was escorted from the room. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the building, as if the walls themselves were relieved. Simon turned back to Cody, his expression softening. I need people like you to fix what's broken here. I'd like to offer you a position as a trainee in fleet management. You'd help ensure every truck leaves this yard safe, and that every driver knows they matter. Cody's eyes widened. Me? But I've only been here a few months. Simon smiled faintly. Integrity doesn't come with seniority. It comes with choices, and you've already made the hardest one. In the days that followed, change swept through Falcon Logistics like a fresh breeze. Simon held meetings with every department, listening more than he spoke. Mechanics who had lived in fear of Chester's retribution shared stories of ignored warnings and impossible deadlines. Younger drivers found their concerns heard for the first time. Dispatchers received training on balancing efficiency with safety, and a new whistleblower hotline was installed to report unsafe practices without fear. Cody threw himself into his new role. He spent mornings riding with drivers, afternoons reviewing maintenance schedules, and evenings helping rewrite safety protocols. Some days felt overwhelming, but every night he slept knowing he was honoring his father's memory. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Simon invited Cody into his corner office. Once his father's, now his own. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the yard, where trucks gleamed under floodlights. Look out there, Simon said quietly. That's what we're rebuilding, one choice at a time. Cody looked over the bustling yard, drivers laughing over coffee, mechanics working without fear, dispatchers calmly coordinating shipments. The transformation felt unreal. Thank you, he said softly. Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. No, Cody, thank you. You didn't just save a shipment. You reminded me what this company was supposed to stand for. As Cody stepped out into the yard, he spotted Travis, the driver he'd helped days before, performing a meticulous pre-trip inspection. Nearby, Kate, once terrified of Chester, guided a new dispatcher through proper protocols. Cody realized then that his decision to stand firm had rippled far beyond himself. What started as one rookie's refusal to cut corners had sparked a sweeping change, one that would keep countless people safe for years to come. This story makes us reflect on the power of one honest decision. Cody's choice didn't just protect lives, it changed an entire company. What would you have done in Cody's shoes? Have you ever faced a choice between what's right and what's easy? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please give it a like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more inspiring tales that remind us integrity still matters.